Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 were correct, and then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be Black Panther, number 2 would be Game Night, number 3 would be Annihilation, number 4 would be Peter Rabbit, and number 5 would be 50 Shades Freed, and I only got 3 out of 5 of my predictions right, which is pretty solid of a prediction, I guess. Let's go over what actually happened at the top 5 this weekend, as well as the overall top 10. Number 1 was once again Black Panther, making $108 million. Now, I thought that this movie, like any other Marvel movie or comic book movie, would like drop at least like 50%, because that's kind of like the common trend. This movie actually only dropped around like 45-ish%, which is actually quite good if you compare it to other comic book movies. That adds to a domestic total of $400 million, which is exactly the doubling point of the production budget of $200 million, and on the worldwide chart, it is sitting at $704 million. Now, I don't think I mentioned this last weekend, but this is like the number one like opening weekend for a February movie, so Deadpool got its butt kicked. Also, the opening weekend went up from 192 to like 202 million, which is like great. Like it went over the original estimates. Also, this weekend it is the second placer for the second weekend like achievement. Like the number one like second weekend is like Star Wars: The Force Awakens with like 140 million for a second weekend, and Black Panther is number 2 with 108. Which is very good for this film. This movie continues to break records for all the right reasons. I may not love it like everyone else is, but I can understand why people are loving it so much, and it definitely is a good movie. So at least this movie is breaking a ton of records, and a movie like 50 Shades Freed is getting forgotten about rather quickly. Moving on to number 2, which is Game Night, making $16 million. And at first glance, when you look at the budget of like $37 million, you might think, well, that's not a very good start. But if you really think about it, it is opening up with a movie that is currently crushing it at the box office, and it's getting a lot of good reception right now. Also, the worldwide total is at 21 million. I think Game Night might actually be a surprise hit to some, not as like surprising as like Jumanji or The Greatest Showman, but I think this movie will do well enough in the next coming weeks. I think this movie will have a lot of staying power because of the positive reception it's been getting. Number 3 is Peter Rabbit, still being able to make it up there, making $12 million, adding to a domestic total of $71 million, which is $21 million over its $50 million budget. Now, this movie is actually not getting like a worldwide like total release until like March, sometime around there. I don't know if Peter Rabbit will be as high up in the US by that time, but I think Peter Rabbit will still be in the top 10, so I can accurately tell you what its worldwide numbers are. I honestly am really anticipating those numbers to come out, because so far the US totals are a little like, you know, it's doing well, but the worldwide is going to really bump this movie up. Moving on to number 4, which I thought maybe had a chance at number 3, but it didn't, honestly, and that is Annihilation, making $11 million this weekend on a budget of $40 million. Now, to some, this could be considered a huge flop, like a lot of other sci-fi films that are really highly praised, but not so many people get it because it's like really confusing or mind-boggling, like I've been hearing about. And there's only 2 other places, like worldwide, this movie's going to be releasing, like Canada and China, because the rest of the worldwide distribution rights were sold to Netflix. So I think Annihilation is actually going to be fine, like financially. Like if they sold it to Netflix, they probably made a good deal to get like a lot of their budget back. So I think Annihilation is going to be okay. Like in the theaters, it probably won't have like a huge profit, but I think the deal with Netflix is helping them out in that area. So at least there's that. I haven't seen the movie yet, so I can't really comment on it otherwise. So let's move on to number 5, which is 50 Shades Freed. Like I said earlier, it's kind of quickly being forgotten about, like slowly going down, making $6 million, adding to a domestic total of $89 million, and on the worldwide chart, it is sitting at $320 million. It's still doing well, obviously, but this movie doesn't really have the staying power as the other 50 Shades movies, I don't think. And it's sad when Peter Rabbit is able to beat out Annihilation, but 50 Shades Freed is not. Annihilation beats that movie out. Let's move on to number 6, which is Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, making $5 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $387 million, and on the worldwide chart, it is sitting at $919 million. And fun fact, the domestic like all-time of like 2017, it is actually $2 million away from replacing Spider-Man Homecoming's all-time domestic run for like the 2017 releases. So that's very good for this movie. I'm honestly thinking that it will get to like $400 million domestically before it leaves the top 10. Maybe that's high hopes because it is dying down a bit, but considering where it is right now, I think there's a shot. Number 7, The 1517 to Paris, a movie that is not breaking any records of any kind still, making $3.6 million, adding to a domestic total of $32 million, and on the worldwide chart it is sitting at $45 million. It needs $15 million more to double its $30 million budget, but since it's already at number 7 and it looks like it's not going to have any wiggle room in like the next couple weeks, I'm pretty sure that this movie's not going to get there whatsoever. Moving on to number 8, which is The Greatest Showman, making $3.4 million, adding to a domestic total of $160 million, and on the worldwide chart it is sitting at $361 million. This movie's been around for so long that I don't really know what else to say about it, so let's just move on. I haven't seen the movie yet. It's doing well. Thank goodness for that, I guess. Moving on to number 9, which is a movie I've never heard about, so we're going to move on from that to Every Day. It made $3.1 million on a budget of 4.9, so it just needs to get like 9 million, so maybe they can still get there after this 3 million opening. I don't know anything about this movie, so let's close out this video with number 10, Early Man, making only $1 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $6 million. And they haven't released any worldwide numbers for this movie yet, and it desperately kind of needs that to see if it can double its $50 million budget. I think you can definitely say this movie is a flop, however, like, regardless, which is kind of disappointing considering Aardman puts out some good stuff, but these stop-motion movies kind of get unrecognized, which is sometimes pretty sad. But now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Now I'm going to predict number 1 is still going to be Black Panther for obvious reasons. Number 2 I think will be Red Sparrow. I think a lot of people are going to be interested from the trailers and also Jennifer Lawrence being in it. Number 3 I think will be Death Wish because it's an action movie that's not Black Panther, so maybe there'll be an audience for that. Number 4 I think will be Game Night. And number 5, Peter Rabbit. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave it in the comments below. And if you got your predictions right for this week, you're going to get a shout out right now. Unless you didn't get it right, then I'm sorry. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.